welcome to another episode of Panther Weekly. Tyler Kuehl alongside my boss here, Ryan Thompson. Ryan, we're going to talk about something today that I don't do a whole lot of anymore, and that's running. We're going to talk about track and field and cross country today. Start off with cross country here, Ryan, simply because the fact that obviously with the pandemic and COVID-19, we're not able to have a fall season, and cross country is one of those sports that's affected by it.
It is, and this is under head coach Scott Cook. He's the only coach in program history. He's been here a number of years, 13, 14, something in that range. You really feel bad for the cross-country people because it really looks like, Tyler, they're not going to have much of a season, if anything at all, in the spring. A lot of that is due to the fact that they can compete indoor and outdoor track and field, and most of them do anyways. But I did want to touch on just a couple different people and kind of recap last year. The men's team finished 11th in the GLIAC Championships, and the women finished 12th in the GLIAC Championships last year. So there's definitely some room for improvement there. Why don't you take a look at some of the top performers, actually?
Well, you have a guy like Thomas Slenbrook there, who was named second team All-GLIAC by placing 19th individually in the GLIAC, and also set the 8K race school record with 25:10. Not a bad time at all by any stretch. Senior Brad Hadavy, who is from Allendale, right down the road. He doesn't go to that other school in Allendale. We don't need to worry about them. He's the top returner based on his finish, where he finished 94th place with a 27:32. Pretty good time there. TJ Moore, a sophomore out of Alma, he finished 98th with a 27:43. And then you have guys like Joey Fox and Les Minor, kind of like you said, guys that have a little bit of room to improve, guys that are going to return. And, that's just the thing, too, is these guys, you learn to kind of run with the weather, and as you get older, you kind of learn some tricks of the trade as you're running. So those guys, I think there's going to be a little bit more improvement this year with this cross-country program, especially on the men's side and the women's side as well.
Yeah, I believe that's the case, too. And also you have some people coming back to the program in redshirt senior Shem Haas. He's from East Rochester, Ohio. He did not compete cross-country last season, took a redshirt season, but he's looking to contribute here in 2020, I should say 2021, as we look forward. But he will also compete in the track and field avenue as well, or venues as well in the distance. But some freshmen, just of note, three people that are coming in. Garrett Melling is probably the top one in the group. He's from Hanover Horton High School. He finished 8th in Division III in the state meet last year, the top finisher coming in. His team also won the Division III state championship, so he's being pushed by other people daily in his runs, and he's somebody that kind of has led the pack for that team in the years past. Also, a couple other freshmen to note. Ian Walker from Essexville Garber. He finished 133rd in Division II state meet. And again, we're talking out of hundreds and hundreds of runners.
Right.
So again, he's in the top third there. And then also Isaiah Salguero from Granville nearby. He finished 146th, and that's in the Division I state meet. Again, when you go Division I, II, III, if you're fast, you're fast. There really isn't a whole lot of separation necessarily. Obviously, you would have maybe some stronger teams, more to choose from in the bigger schools. But It's good to see them come in, and hopefully they can contribute, if not cross-country, certainly in track and field.
Yes, and that is definitely for sure. And talking about some of the women's side as well, some of the top performers from last year, Megan Postuma set the school record in the 6K race with a time of 23:27. So congratulations for her. Much belated congratulations. Juliana Wilson, a sophomore, she comes right out of West Michigan Aviation Academy. I've known a few people that come out of there that are actual athletes. It's kind of unique.
They can fly.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Oh, my gosh. I should have seen that one coming like a jet flying over a stadium, but we didn't.
Okay.
Placed 81st with a 24:53. Autumn Hannock and Avery Breach finishing 110th and 111 there. And also, like I said, with the same thing with the men's side, you have a lot of very competitive women coming into the program as well, on top of the returning class.
Yeah, two people will be signed and coming in. Olivia Richards, a freshman, a very competitive Traverse City Central program that finished second in the state in Division I in 2019, and also Morgan Steenstra from Granville Calvin Christian. She placed 71st overall in Division III in the state meet in 2019.
So, yeah, obviously a lot to look forward to whenever the cross-country season happens next. Well, obviously we'll talk with Scott Cook about who is the cross-country, but also track and field. We'll get to a little bit, Ryan and I will, in the track and field in the second half of our show here. But let's go to the interview with Ryan Thompson talking with head coach Scott Cook, cross-country's Erin Dorn, and track and field's thrower Claude Ockert.
And today we have the privilege of being joined by cross-country and track and field teams, Scott Cook, the head coach, along with Claude Ockert and Erin Dorn. First, we'll start with you, Coach Cook. First question I have is, without a fall cross-country season, what is the latest as to whether the program will compete in the spring?
It seems that at this point we will not have a spring season for cross country. Unfortunately, with our schedule, within a complete indoor and outdoor season, it's a little hard just to cram something in the middle just to say that we want to do it. So there also doesn't seem to be a movement for a national championship in the spring for cross country. So I think most of the track coaches in the GLIAC have decided that we would prefer just to focus our kids on the track and field side of things come the spring. But obviously, as we've learned in the pandemic, things can change in a hurry. So I wouldn't absolutely rule anything out at this point, but it doesn't look like we'll have a cross country GLIAC season this year.
As you talk about cross country on that side of things, how do you continue to build the program to climb higher into the upper echelon of the GLIAC?
Well, I think the first thing is just a lot of hard work. The pandemic will give us a little bit of time to just focus on training hard, whether that's running more miles or spending a little bit more time in the weight room and not have to worry about competitions. But yeah, it's making sure the kids we have here are working hard and focused on that goal, and then bringing in recruits that can raise us to that level.
Let's switch gears a little bit to the indoor track and field. You had a couple of All-Americans last year in Isaiah and Emma Schaefer. How hard was it to not be able to compete at nationals?
It was difficult because we were actually down there. We had practice the day before. We had a coaches meeting that afternoon, and obviously the elephant in the room was being discussed because they had already canceled our banquet. But the plan was for them to move ahead with the meet. Where everyone was in town, everyone had practiced, and then just the afternoon, evening before to tell us, make arrangements to go home because this meet isn't happening. I think that was really tough. I think it was harder to be down there and just have the feeling like we're all here, we're all around each other. Why don't we just go ahead and do it? But that wasn't to be. And obviously we know a lot more about the disease now than we probably did at the time on, May 11th or whatever, or March 11th. But yeah, that was difficult to make the big journey and be all excited about it and then just not have it happen.
What are your main focuses in terms of characteristics that you want to see in recruiting someone to Davenport?
Well, this will be the hardest year I've ever had recruiting, because if you look at, as we've had, quite a few kids visit already, we're looking at times they ran as 10th graders. There's a big difference between a 10th grade boy or girl and a senior man or woman even. So we're looking at times, and doesn't give us an accurate picture the whole time. So, we have to spend this year probably talking to more high school coaches about their character. Obviously, good kids are going to make good decisions, and people who make good decisions are successful, whether that's the classroom or in the playing field or arena. So really, focusing in on good character kids that want to be good, that are not afraid to work hard, making sure they're good students and they're academically prepared, probably more so than ever. That's something we've always focused on, but with so many things up in the air about, what happens if we go online, which if we have to switch back or something like that, we want good students to be able to, be prepared for that, or also have the opportunity to be successful.
As the head coach, what lessons do you think that you've learned since the beginning of this pandemic that you may use in the future?
I think patience is a big one, because we want to know what's tomorrow, and it doesn't happen on our timetable, especially when you're dealing with a disease and you have to deal with things that are changing rapidly daily. We're still dealing with stuff like that. So I think teaching us patience, which is like an awesome life lesson, but one that's sometimes a little painful. I think just, taking advantage of the opportunities you have, focusing on the things you can control. I mean, they're all kind of cliches that we talk about as coaches all the time, but I think this really puts them in your face, because I can't control whether we're going to have a cross-country season. I can't control if we're going to have an indoor season. Shoot, I can't even control if we're going to have practice next week, because you never know what's going to happen. So, controlling our attitude and how we react to things is probably the most important thing.
Thanks for your responses. I appreciate it. And now we're going to switch gears to Claude Ockert, who's a senior from Kingsley, Michigan. Claude, first question for you. What is it about track and field that really excites you every day?
Well, it's mostly the teammates that I have every day. You know, we have such a large team, but you have the opportunity to grow really close with your small group of throwers that I have, or the people that I get to practice with every day. And then the excitement to know that there's a small competition between all the groups and the entire team to see who can do the best at every meet, and it really pushes everybody to become a better athlete.
You know, at what point did you start to think that throws was something that you could do in college?
It was my senior year in high school when I was looking at, because I was a runner and a thrower in high school. When I decided that I was interested in competing at the college level, I realized that I would be better on a team as a thrower than I would a runner. Seeing the coaches that we had available here at Davenport with Coach Cook and Jake Adams, I realized it would be really good to throw with Jake, my throws coach, because he's really intelligent when it comes to the events that we throw. He studies the sport, and it really shows in practice when you see the growth that all experience.
You know, you've competed in the discus and the hammer outdoors. You know, which one is more challenging and why?
Well, my primary throwing event in the outdoors is hammer, and I've thrown discus, and I find hammer to be more challenging because the more I understand about the hammer throw, the more I realize that I don't know. I set a way higher standard for myself in hammer just because I've been progressing through it, and that's the event that I want to compete at a very high level, including nationals with. So over this season and the next season, I have the opportunity to compete. I think that's going to be the one I'm going to focus on the most, and getting over those hurdles that the event has to offer.
So based on that, you know, what are your goals you have individually and your team goals for this spring?
So for this spring individually, I plan on qualifying for national in the outdoor. I want to get top 3, if not first in GLIAC for a hammer. It's an ambitious goal, but you got to aim high. And then as a team, we want to bring as many athletes, not just on the throwing squad, but on the entire team with us to nationals. We want them all to place highly at GLIACs to show that we're here to compete. We want to make a name for ourselves, and then it also helps with bringing the younger athletes in and recruiting. We want to make everyone know that Davenport's a great school to go to and compete at.
Thank you, Claude. I really appreciate it. And now we're going to switch gears to Erin Dorn, a sophomore from Manistee, Michigan. First question for you, Erin. As someone who competes in cross country and track and field, are there any major differences in your training between the two sports?
So I'd say for me personally, there's some significant changes because I'm primarily an 800-meter runner when it comes to track, whereas cross country we're running 5 and 6Ks. So it's a lot different shift from endurance and distance to a bit more speed. However, both are able to like build on one another and just make me better at each individual sport.
You know, what's been some of the toughest challenges for you personally during this pandemic?
Personally, being at home for so long on my own like training program without any teammates to run with, that was like a big challenge, and just not seeing like all the new people that I just met and just been at college, like getting along with and getting used to being around every day. It was just really weird being removed from that environment and like going back home.
I'll ask you the same question I asked Claude. You know, what are your goals individually and as a team this spring?
So I think right now we have a really young cross-country team. So I think that's going to transfer over really well to the spring when we're able to be doing distance and mid-distance events. I think that a lot of us have a lot of potential to just be able to like push each other and make each other better runners. Personally, for myself, I really want to get under the 220 mark for the 800. I've never been able to do that. I want to get around 215, just like get in the teens. Run, you know, as a best, maybe run the mile or the 1500 a couple times, see what kind of time I can run in that.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're okay.
All right, let's move on to the next one. And final question for you, Erin. This program has always been strong in the classroom. How difficult is it to balance athletics and academics?
So this semester is definitely very different. All of my classes are currently real-time virtual. So I'm honestly having a harder time managing that than being in an actual classroom, because you're not in the classroom where you have more structure, you're on your own more. So you really just have to like set aside your space to do your homework and just focus in on that. It can be difficult to manage things, but you really just have to like plan ahead. I like to use like a literal like hand paper, write out what my homework is, just make sure everything's clear for me. As long as you're like aware of what's coming up and due dates, and you communicate well with like your teachers or other classmates and your teammates, then it just makes it a lot easier.
Well, thank you both for catching up with us, and you too, Coach Cook. Appreciate all three of you being able to take the time to talk to me today. And for everything else about the cross country and track and field teams, you can visit dupanthers.com and follow us on social media.
And thank you once again to head coach Scott Cook, Erin, and Claude. Great interview, though, Ryan. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't know if you're as good as Cooper, though. I mean, it's pretty close competition between you two guys. That's for sure.
A lot of the same questions.
A lot of the same questions. That is for sure. So obviously, like I said, we talked a little bit about the beginning of the show about cross country. And Coach Scott Cook coaching both track and field and cross country. It is still kind of a bummer that we may not have a cross country season, even if it is in the spring.
Yeah. Well, I think the good news is they're going to try to compete and hopefully get the opportunity to in the spring. So those people that maybe, and Erin talked about this a little bit in her interview, she's in cross country, so she's training. And that was one of the questions. How do you train for something like cross country when she also runs the 800?
Right.
So she's also running, a sprint, I guess, for the most part. But then you're also training to run a long distance. So they're going to still get to compete. I guess that's the good news.
Right.
And they may run a mile, maybe a 5,000 meters or something like that. So they're going to still get the chance to compete.
Yeah.
So that's always a good thing. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the other coaches on the staff. You got Matt Hewson, who does distance running. 8 years, I believe he's been here at Davenport. Jeremy Weir, tireless worker. He does some of the multis and some of the jumps. Works really closely with recruiting. 7 seasons, I think he's been here at DU. Jake Adams, who works with the throws. He was an SVSU alum here in the GLIAC, all GLIAC 7 times. So our assistant coaches, not only with Scott Cook, have a lot of experience in building programs and building winners, and I think that's the point where Davenport wants to get to, is finishing 5th last year in the indoor meet for both teams. They want to continue to climb and continue to do well in the GLIAC.
And it is a very tough GLIAC, as we've seen. Ashland always does really well, but it's interesting because talk about cross country missed the entire season. Indoor track missed the winter championships last year as well.
Yeah.
They will be back in Birmingham in Alabama in 2021 here, but what do you think that does for the track program, missing out, going through the entire season but not being able to compete in the championships?
Well, that's tough because they were already there, and this was also mentioned in the interview. They already were in Birmingham and we're ready to go, and they were going to have a banquet. Well, then the banquet got canceled, and all of a sudden now you're not going to compete. So you're gearing up. You're competing for a couple of months, and you don't get that opportunity. So it's heartbreaking for those kids, and I think they all understand the situation at hand. But that's probably fueling them even more for this year. Emma and Isaiah Schaefer, All-Americans, because there wasn't that national meet, they were just declared All-Americans because they weren't sure who was going to be an All-American based on that meet. So congratulations to them. They're both from Pewamo, Westphalia. Emma's coming back. She's a redshirt senior. She was the GLIAC champion in the pentathlon 2 years in a row. She broke the school record last year, and again, we talked about she qualified for the indoor nationals, so she's probably the cream of the crop on the women's side.
And, one of the biggest things with track is because it's not just, yes, it seems like an individual sport because of one person that competes at a time. But in the end, there are team national championships can be won as well. And building depth is very important in order to actually have success as a school here at Davenport in track and field.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I talk with Scott. Like, how do these teams continuously do well? Well, they've got 90 people, and they've got 3 excellent long jumpers or 3 excellent high jumpers or 3 people that can place. It's not the people that finish first and second, but if you can get a 6th and a 7th place and a 5th, those points add up.
Right.
And you look at, you had mentioned Ashland, they won the national championship outdoor for the men in 2019. Big squad size, people that are diverse. You also want to get people on your squad if you're, hey, can I do the high jump, long jump? Can you do multiple events?
Right.
And that's important, and that's what we had, heptathlon, pentathlon, some of these events where they can go out there and succeed, and we do have student athletes that can do that. But that's really how you build your program and start to rise. Our region, one of the toughest in the country in cross country and in track, several nationally ranked teams year in and year out in our region. Grand Valley right up the road, very good, have won several national championships in both of those sports. So building that depth really, I think, and with talking with Scott Cook in the past, is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and it's something that's eventually gonna develop, and maybe we get got a nice track over here. Maybe we'll start to slowly push our way up. And hey, we're still young. We've only been D2 for what now? This will be the fourth year if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second full year, but yeah.
Second full year, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how we're going to build and how Davenport's going to build on the track. But before we go, almost forgot, Ryan, got to make sure we thank some of our sponsors for this week's Panther Weekly, J&H Family Stores, Chick-fil-A, our good Uccellos was there last night, had a good Stromboli, Team Giselle, and Adidas, of course. Look at that swag. Look at this awesome Adidas swag that we have here wearing. And, of course, that's also what our track and field and cross-country people wear as well, because we got all the good stuff thanks to our good friends at Adidas. And thank you all once again for watching another episode of Panther Weekly. For Ryan Thompson, I'm Tyler Kuehl saying thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.